make the best stuff of the greatest characters. And they make the DC cover girls, including the new line. Frank Cho is the new artist for the line starting in 2020. So you can see his Batgirl will be out in February, his Supergirl will be out in May, then his Harley Quinn will be out in August of 2020, and the Catwoman wedding piece by Joelle Jones will be out in June. It's the last piece of the Joelle Jones run, and that fabulous, fabulous dress, I think, is why it might be taking.
And CoverGirls is one of our longest running statue lines. I'd like to give a quick shout out to the longest running. George Brewer is in the audience, who actually founded DC Collectibles. So we actually came up with this line together and still continued on with all these great artists, being Frank Cho to the newest edition. Joelle's stuff was great, and right, that wedding dress is fabulous.
I'm curious, from the sculptors on the panel, is it the best day or the worst day when you get a piece of art and it's like, elaborate wedding gown?
It sort of depends. Some jobs require, depending on how intricate it is, sometimes you can kind of work out, do like a template and repeat some patterns around it. But if it's a lot of very specific things that are all different sections, then there's a lot of one-off work that you have to do. So it's more time consuming to do it. You know, I'm doing it by hand, both working digitally. So depending on the medium, it may be more or less work.
Right, and depending on how small and intricate it is, you know, you can either do it by hand or you can create like an alpha in digital where you would sort of project it on. But it's never quite that easy, but you can draw out the pattern in Photoshop, and then you can use that as a template.
Can you lean in a little bit more?
Sorry. So.
Hello? How about now? Wow.
So you were telling us you could make an alpha in Photoshop.
So you do a drawing in Photoshop in black and white, and then the white is what would be a positive relief in the digital sculpture, and the black would be a negative. So you can draw out patterns, and then you can use that as a guide to do intricate patterns.
That's so cool. I'm kind of a textile nerd, so that's definitely exciting on that front as well. So we also have, of course, the DC Designer Series. And first up in that line, I believe we have Batman by Olivier Coipel out in April. The Harley Quinn by Enrico Marini will be out in May. And the Batman Deluxe by Alex Ross will be out next September.
This is another great line for us. Really lets us get to show off what DC Collectibles is capable of at a larger scale, because the detail on all these pieces is great. You know, that Harley piece is really unique from the Batman Dark Prince Charming. It's just such a cool piece. That was Karen Palengo who sculpted that one. And then the Alex Ross at the end, it's a classic, powerful Alex Ross pose. So it's really, that's a really interesting assortment of stuff that shows a lot of the breadth of things we can do.
And I was hoping, this of course is Librejo. Jean, if you could talk to us a little bit about translating Librejo's work into statuary.
First of all, Gene is the hand-picked sculptor for Librejo. So I'm not allowed to give his projects to anybody else from now on, so thanks for that.
Yeah, when I had first seen Lee's work years ago, I think on a Batman, Batman Bloodshot crossover or something like that. And I always looked at it and was like, wow, that dude draws like I sculpt pretty much. And then a few years later, these guys offered me the first Batman Black and White that Lee designed. And from there, I did a Harley, and then I did a Joker, and then this one came up last year. And the big difference with this one, he's got all of that ring mail underneath the costume for the stab-proof costume he built after he gets wrecked in the beginning of the book. So that was the only real challenge with it, because I've gotten used to the way he does capes with all of the intricate kind of folds and wrinkles and stuff like that. And for the most part, he kept a lot of the designs similar, like the boots, the cowls, like a little bit different. But working traditionally, you work kind of a little differently. I only just started working into digital. And with the traditional end of things, you're constantly sort of sharpening, reworking, adding detail, and then cleaning up. and then adding more things and going back. So there's a lot of back and forth. There's not so much of a finishing a part and setting it aside, because you're constantly going back, rematching to the artwork, because you don't want to get too far away from it where you start to veer off course. So it's kind of been that with all of these. And I've also done I did a Superman that Lee did for the Man of Steel line.
That's one of the coolest pieces that Collectibles have done. That cape coming straight off its old bubbly.
Yeah, it's a
That's a
nightmare.
beautiful piece. Yeah.
A nightmare in play. That's the big difference. Another big difference between working digital or traditional. Traditionally, you have to deal with the physics of keeping that cape upright, and everything that you do in the clay is going to impact the product, so you have to constantly think about it. Whereas digitally, you can create that, and you have to think forward to how that thing's going to stand in the product, but you're not fighting it constantly as you create it in the clay. And I think the one other piece I did with Lee was Watchmen. I did a Rorschach for their Watchmen line. So it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, his style of art meshes to what I really like to do with superheroes. It was one of the rare occasions where I could just kind of go off. Because previous to working with Lee, I started at McFarlane, and their stuff was always kind of crazy and off the hook. And Lee's stuff was the first that was really closest to that.
Yeah, I think the realism you're talking about is really what punches these pieces up. Like the little wingmail and the cape stuff. There's so much in these Lee Bermejo pieces that really is just amazing. And his artwork, he gives really good directions. His turnarounds are really solid.
Yeah.
He's been
For
great.
the audience who might not know, what's a turnaround?
Oh, sorry, thanks. So basically, when we're doing statues, which we don't always get, as both these guys can attest to, and it'd be great if we always had a full 30 turnaround, which is basically a drawing of the front, the side, the back, maybe both sides.
And headshots.
And headshots. I think you get 3/4 headshots, right?
Yeah, and Lee also had a Batman cowl fabricated, life-size to what he wanted the cowl to be. And
Over the top.
you know, previously he had done some slightly more traditional looking Batman costumes, but I think he was really influenced by the Christopher Nolan movies, because when he started doing his modern Batman, he made him a little more armored, and the cowl had a little bit of that flavor.
Structure.
Yeah. But still a traditional kind of cut around the mouth and things like that. So he had a ton of reference for when I was working on it. So it's not like you had to guess and then, oh, no, that's not it, that's not it.
Yeah, that's my job.
Yeah, Jim's there to second guess.
Bolstering everyone. Yeah, but a lot of times we don't get much of a turnaround. That might be what John Matthews did. There's one front shot, and almost all of it's in shadow, and that's it. So sometimes you just got to work through stuff. But Lee's been great about that.
So if you get a picture and a bunch of it is missing, is that an exciting opportunity to guess what the other half looks at, or just stressful?
Definitely, I would say. Yeah, sometimes you get great turnarounds, but the side doesn't match up to the front at all.
Almost nobody knows how to do that.
Almost never, and then the back is completely different from the front.
Someone's always somebody comes up this.
Yeah, like the nose is like this and it's not possible.
Yeah.
We're used to that, but I think as artists, we find ways where we can let loose on areas where, you know, there's not a lot of structure in terms of, you know, direction.
And one question I think you've gotten to let loose some, I hope, is the Batman Adventures Continue figures. Which, yeah, clap for them, they're great. We all love these figures very much, and we have some already announced ones coming up. We've got Red Hood, Azrael, Batman, and Harley Quinn coming in May 2020. But we also have the super armored Batman, Deathstroke, the Joker, and Robin for July of next year. And
There it is. No, we're that's it.
this is the first time we're seeing past the design on this one. I think this is the Batman the last figure, of course, which will be out in October 2020. And Vampire Batman for October 2020. Please tell us a little bit about these.
Actually, it's interesting. Paul's working on these now. It's funny. So we're going from something like the Lee Bermejo hyper detailed and stuff to something like this, and it's interesting because I think sometimes, Gene, like when we were working on Warcraft, you could sometimes hide stuff if it's like, I don't know, just making something up. for these kind of guys though, I mean, you can't really miss an angle, right? Because then suddenly the arm's like totally wrong.
Right, exactly. I like to say there's zero tolerance with these.
There's no tolerance for you, period.
For me, in general, it doesn't matter what project. It has to look like the art, and it's in this case, it's like Bruce Timm's iconic style filtered through Ty Templeton's beautiful work. To take one of Greg Capullo's characters, which is it's odd because it's a modern character, it's so new, and we're putting it, into this realm. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the idea for this line was really neat because we were trying to figure out ways to keep the Batman animated line going because it was very popular. Obviously, we did really well with these. We made a whole Batwing, we made the Batmobile. An entire Batcave, which is one of the most expensive things we've ever produced. But it was starting to get to the point where we were over 50 characters in. As much as I like Clock King or some other people, it's unlikely we're going to move enough unless every single person here is going to say, I'm going to buy Clock King tomorrow.
Will you go buy a
No
Clock King?
hands. There you go, see? So we just looked, oh, there's one, okay. That's not quite enough for me to make it tonight. But
How about crazy quote?
If all I can do is one. Who? And there's all kinds of votes for people. But what we want to do is take what's happening since the show is over. There's been a lot of really cool characters that have been created that we went back, we reached out to Paul Dini. He's actually written some preliminary bios on some of these guys, so he's very involved with the project. So we're super jazzed about this, and I think it's a really good way to fit in what's happening now and then link it up with a popular storyline.
So, cannot wait to see these. And I am fascinated by the different level of challenge because the very realistic art styles are wonderful, but something this different, like, was there a learning curve the first time you took on something in this vein, or did it come really naturally?
The cartoon stuff comes naturally to me. I don't know how long I've been doing these, maybe 5 years ago I probably started, I did the first one, can't remember what it was, but it's not that difficult. You just have to know how the 3/4 view translates into the front,
That's why we can negotiate your pay after. Have you done a lot of stuff like this, the animated style? Because we don't usually call you in for that kind of thing.
I did a bunch of Thundercat stuff for Mezco, but yeah, usually I get hired for really crazy detailed projects, really hard. But I used to do this stuff, I've been doing this about 25 years, and the first stuff I worked on was for Warner Brothers that did a lot of Looney Tunes stuff, or like weird things like the top of like tea kettles and all sorts of oddball stuff. But so I've done it, but generally this stuff doesn't come my way. I like doing it, but and it's a lot, lends itself more to being done visually too. Obviously you can do it traditionally.
That makes sense, you can flip stuff.
It does, and you can make drastic changes, on a whim. Make the whole thing larger, make Purple On larger, it comes in handy. I mean, I do yearn for like the realistic stuff when I get put on this stuff for a long time. Jim?
You've mentioned it before.
But this is actually my first time seeing the Vampire Batman art, so that'll be exciting.
Are you already planning? Is it going in the back of your head?
Well, yeah, kind of. It's done in my head already.
Oh, all right.
Well, it does come naturally to you. That was like 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's how it all happens. The magic of Comic-Con. Right here, it's happening right before Paul's already done, we didn't finish the panel.
That's it.
There will be a live sculpting challenge later. We did not tell you.
I hope you like watching grass grow.
Gene versus Paul.
Gotta bring in my blue box.
So we also have some concept sketches for more things from the Batman Adventures Continue line. Jim, tell me a little about what we're seeing, because this is, of course, Thomas Wayne as Batman and Hush, but there's been some evolution, right?
Yeah, it's interesting you pointed out. So we got Ty, when we talked about these guys, he did, I'm sure most of you read the Court Owl storyline. There's a lot of different owls in the book, of talents. So we basically had him draw like 3 or 4 different ones. I think we showed a different one of these at Comic-Con, and I know it was a scary story, that's true. That's okay. But actually we went back and tried to find one that matched way better with what we thought the style of what we're going with the show. It's a lot simpler. There wasn't a lot of, the first talent drew was hyper complicated, all this stuff all over it. That's still more complex than probably most of the Batman animated stuff would be, but we think it's a little closer to where we think it should go. Thomas Wayne's been a great character recently. I think the Ty did a really nice job translating that. And then Hush. I mean, he's been a pretty important player in the Batman universe, and he's never been on any shows outside, in the Timverse, if we can call it that.
Can't wait to see this
Yeah, I think it'd be cool.
make their way into my specific collection.
I believe Mr. Harding's working on
On what?
some of those.
Oh, those up there? Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, they're all done in your head, I forgot. They're all done. I know I even showed this stuff.
Surprise. So of course, the DC Essentials action figure line continues apace. I think we have some new stuff to look at.
Yep, so this line's been ongoing. It's interesting, it actually survived, it outlived its original purpose. The reason for making Essentials originally was to make about 12 of the most important characters, then keep them in stores so they could constantly be refreshed. But the line did really well, so we're like, well, okay, we'll just extend it, which is how most lines get extended when they do well. So we wanted to add a few new guys in the hopper over here. The Flash Speed Force variant is really fun. I like that one. I'm a big fan of like toys like Clear Toys and Glow in the Dark stuff. I mean, not everybody is, but I like it.
No, I love that. How do you decide who's coming up next in these?
That's always the big design department argument of who we think should be next. So even for the Batman animated series or any of the lines, really. There's, like Batman Black and White's another example, there's so many, you think it'd run out after over 100, but there's so many more we want to do. And this line, it's just trying to figure out what are essential moments in DC history. So we have a huge list that we go through. Obviously, we were Batman's important, and we haven't ever done a black suit Superman. Oh, we did a black suit Superman toy a long time ago, and he still had the mullet. Obviously, this one is mulletless.
Mullet free.
Mullet free. We should put that on the packaging.
The no mullet variant.
We thought the Speed Force Flash was cool, and then Nightwing, we produced him in his with the blue emblem on the front, but not using the red one. So we thought that made a good combination of figures.
And for folks with a particular attachment to that run, that's the kind of thing you just accept that you're never going to get a toy of like a particular era that was really important to you, and it doesn't always come around.
Super frustrating, even when you're leading the charge to not get, you just can't get whatever you want all the time. So you can try.
1,000 toys all the time.
I think if we count these that are coming out, I've done almost 30 essentials now.
Yeah, way more than Gene.
Look at that, Gene.
Zero. Yeah, Paul's been a great partner on that. That's a good point. I mean, you worked with Ray through a lot of these in the beginning.
Yeah.
Has anything changed over the time of working on the essentials, or did you sort of quickly figure out what they should be like and off to the races?
Well, there was a lot of work before we did any figure at all. So Batman was the first one, but we had to make the body first, and there was a lot of back and forth with that.
The articulation had to be figured out.
Yeah, the articulation had to work really well. So yeah, I wasn't involved in these because these are a lot of these were done in-house, and at the factory.
Fixing some stuff, but Paul basically launched the line with these things, so we were really happy with the way they came out. He was a great partner with all that stuff, and figuring out a lot of the details and how it was all going to work. So nice stuff.
Yeah.
I will say, if you see one of your action figures out in the wild and it has clearly been dragged through the dirt and carried around, is that like a cool feeling that it's well loved, or does it just hurt because you worked really hard on those?
No, every time I give a kid an action figure, I tell him he has to open the box. And usually the dad or the mom is like, and I'm like, open it, play with it.
Open it.
Yeah, I'm over that. I mean, I do collect the action figures to keep them in the package, don't get me wrong.
Open it. I'm gonna send Gene to your house. Open some stuff. How about you, Gene? How are you with collecting stuff? I mean, everybody on this panel is definitely a collector of stuff. I don't know if we can go so far as hoarder, maybe, but.
Yeah, probably border and border.
Okay.
I got into doing this work because I was a collector first, and then I found I had a proclivity towards doing it. And in the beginning, before people were producing tons of Batman stuff, because I'm a Batman guy, I would buy one to open and one to hang on the wall. And then now there's so many Batman figures, you can't possibly do it. I don't even buy everything anymore. I just buy select ones and I open them up just as it takes up less space, but.
But then you save the box.
I do save the boxes, the ones I open. I have a room filled with empty boxes.
What about you, Jim?
I got into the business the same way Gene did. I started collecting first. I was buying a lot of urban transformer robots and stuff like that. Oh, there you go. Okay, I will admit I do also have GoBots. So, but this is a no shame panel. So I was buying a lot of that stuff, and actually, when George brought me on board, I had already been working on Dragon Ball and some other stuff. So like Gene, I basically was like, this is really cool. I should get more into this. And I just kind of changed what my career was doing to get into this, and it's really interesting to be able to drive the direction for what DC's doing in some cases. Like, we have the Bombshells line, there's a Bombshells book out there. You helped build some of the anti-comic stuff early on, and we got the book for that. So it's really cool being on, like, a fan from the outside but working inside the company and being able to move things ahead. I mean, everything we do is an extension of DC storytelling. Just taking out the comic book page and maybe out of the box and putting it on your desk. So, how about you?
I take mine out of the boxes, but I try to keep them. There's a couple that are still boxed up, but you gotta at least open them once and play with them, or you didn't really buy the toy. That's just my.
What about Phillips? What is he doing?
I only collect things that fell off the back of a truck.
He's the only person that fell off the back of the truck.
It's a neat collection.
I believe we have some more treats in this line. Oh no.
So we were trying to figure out what to do with these. We saw the DCeased book come out, and it kind of caught us by surprise that it was so huge. So,
Anybody reading DCeased right now?
Yeah. So we thought this was pretty fun. So we basically are putting these into the Essentials line and just, I guess, zombified. So they'll be essentially DCeased. So clever. Okay, that's great. So take that name off the package. He changed his mind. So anyway, these are fun. It's just building on that line already. I mean, does anybody want to see any DCeased statues as well?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, does that mean something maybe Paul wants to work on one?
That'd be fun.
I'll give you a cartoon one. But yeah, we'd like to add more of these into the line going forward. So it should be a lot of fun. But then we need to work on the books really crazy. The designs are super neat, and it's just fun to do Superman all messed up looking like that. I mean, the Joker and Harley have been a little messy. Maybe not that messy before, but taking Superman to that place is kind of fun.
Yeah, I'll post pictures of the digital sculpts of Batman and Superman of their heads after this, so you can see how scarred up they are.
You do really get a head start on these, I suppose. Maybe a statue would make sense.
That's true. You know, cut my pay.
Wow. Oh, okay, good.
I do recommend if you haven't checked that book out and you want to get your heart broken instantly by a comic
Oh,
book,
that's
it's great. I believe we also, in the wide range of beautiful interpretations that we get from DC Collectibles, one of my favorite lines is the DC Artist's Alley. Can you tell us a little bit about this line?
No. So Artist Alley has been a real labor of love for the design department in DC. These are artists that we reached out to that aren't editorial focused. So we literally walk up and down Artist Alley finding artists. So if you're in there or presenting there, it's possible we can stop by, grab your card, and you never know. I mean, Chris, maybe who's been featured, I've known him for like over 10 years, and we never use him for anything. And then this line came up, and we're like, hey, guess what? Here you go. So he was super excited about it. I mean, everybody in this line is really, I mean, some of the representations are a little closer to normal, but not this one. And not the next one that you're going to show, I don't think.
I don't know, this is how I remember them.
Yes. Gene's a Batman guy. That's kind of how he pictures him, right? Pretty much. Yeah. So James Roman is, oh, sorry.
Yeah, he was the original designer of Mad Balls. Has created some monster versions of Batman, the Joker, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, which are in stores this month.
Yeah, they're out now. And they're in the booth.
Fantastic. Have you been to the DC booth yet? All right, some of you have made it to the DC booth yet. By 2 days from now, I expect everyone to have made it. Thank you.
Wow, that's a requirement for attending the show, right? Pretty sure.
You told me I could just make things up, right?
Yes,
It's mandatory.
but they must be listening to it. So yeah, James was great. He actually did all the drawings and he concepted everything, sculpted everything himself. And they're actually, funnily enough, if you go to the booth, they're way bigger than I thought they were going to be. But everyone just thought they were so cool. We didn't shrink them down at all. So they're pretty massive, and they're super crazy. I don't know which one I like the best. They're just all of them are insane. Yeah, pretty great.
Was that a vote for both of them? What I'm hearing
They're
about?
all great.
All great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Killer Croc is.
Yeah. Killer Croc might be my favorite for this line.
That's your favorite. That's pretty good.
He's so cute. I know that's not what I'm supposed to be thinking. He's very scary. But...
Good cosplay. I want to see some cosplays in these next Comic-Con.
So in stores this October as well, I believe we have two variant Joe Batman figures.
Yeah. Another cool interpretation of Batman. Yeah.
I love these. I love the very out there style on these. You can get the Lava Flow variant exclusively at 3D Retro and the Bubblegum variant exclusively at Toy Tokyo, but you can buy them at Toy Tokyo's booth here at New York Comic Con.
Yeah. Again, Joe's a big name in the vinyl community. We were really happy to get a chance to work with him. This whole line he did, he does all like these animal kind of themed versions. There's a Robin, there's this Batman. He did Penguin. We finally got a Penguin out there. That's based on his art. It's really.
And finally, we have, this will be the 5th figure in Chris Minga's Artist Alley series. Will be out next June.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
When you work with the Artist Alley creators, do you go back and forth? How do you go back and forth on which characters they will include in their lines?
So we basically have, with the Artist Alley, it's interesting because a lot of these guys will present like they want to do like Ragman or Crazy Quilt or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, because DC has a lot of very interesting, obscure characters, and unfortunately we don't get to work on it as much as we would like to, but we give them a list of, like when we approached, I guess Chris, we gave him his 6 people you can choose. So we know we can sell at least a good amount, and because it was an experimental line, we didn't want to start with a bunch of obscure characters, so, but like any toy line, the longer you go on, the deeper you have to dive in. Even on something like Bombshells, we got Killer Frost in there, and there's, you go pretty deep in when the line keeps continuing. So, but yeah, that's the 5th one. We thought Aquaman was a good fit for Chris, and he really wanted to do that. So.
It's a gorgeous figure. And I believe more figures and artists are going to be announced at New York Toy Fair.
Yeah, stay tuned for more announcements there. We're going to be unleashing the next wave of artists we've chosen to work with, and that's all I'm allowed to say.
Okay, what's the...
No, that's all I'm allowed to say, no.
No, but I have more questions.
No, I think that's it.
Oh.
Okay, fine.
I tried. What is the most deep cut character you wish would be a viable to market figure? All of you, please. If anyone has one ready.
Oh, no. That's a good question. You got me?
The most random DC character. I don't have to think about it.
That's not a good answer.
Well, Jim brought up Raglan before. I really dig that character.
That's a good one.
Right, that would be awesome.
And I brought up Crazy Quilt a little earlier.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. Wow, that's a tough one. I have crossed off so many characters in my 15 years at DC. Wow. That's a tough one.
Well, once you made the Sergio Aragonis Batman, I feel like our
Yeah,
deepest dreams had already come true.
We made a few Batmans over the years, I think. What is that? That is hard. See, I feel bad to make fun of you. I can't think of it. I don't know. There's what I like that.
How about the original Red Tornado?
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, I never got to that. Mahunkel? Mahunkel was actually on the list for Andy County and Bombshell. He didn't make it. So it's so good as Bombshell.
Now I need a story about the vengeance of Mahunkel who keeps not getting a toy.
Yeah,
just
it's like
trying to get on that list.
it's almost there. Pretty close. So I didn't give you an answer, so that's great. If I'll think of it later.
There's so many.
I know, and I have them all lying around the table somewhere.
But I have gotten some characters that we probably never expected to get to see in a DC Collectibles line, but I really love these guys.
Oh, yeah.
So these figures are GameStop exclusives, but they're so gorgeous. And Paul, I know you worked on several of these. What was different about these versus the other animated stuff?
Well, I only worked on the Bat family figures, so Batman, Batgirl, and Robin. And Jonathan Matthews did all the Turtles. So what was on model, and when I say on model, it means look exactly like the artwork. So I feel like we did it pretty well.
You know, I had to go through another round of approvals also with the Nickelodeon people, so that makes it a little different.
Right.
You messed your style with John's really well, so we were a little worried about how they're gonna, they are actually two different people. So-
Right, it was good that we split them, turtles and humans. But a big part of it is the paint too. So we had one painter do all of them, and it made them work as a whole unit.
Yeah, they work really well together, they all stay great.
Yeah,
And actually come with some cool accessories, so that's
lots of accessories.
How do you collaborate with the painters on them? Do they sort of see the things as you're building them, or is it like all of phase one, then all of phase two?
Yeah, one step at a time. So I just work directly with Jim and his team.
And we'll try to pair people up. I mean, sometimes guys have people that are used to work. I mean, Gene, you have your own painter, yeah? So when we hired Gene, we just give him the whole project, and he just, sometimes hands it on time. And then,
I just get surprised.
he's a good surprise, mostly. So, but yeah, Paul, like, you don't like to do any paint any of your stuff.
No, I used to, but
Yeah.
I just don't have time.
Yeah, so we
I started 3D printing now, though. So
That's it.
Really? What got you started with 3D printing?
well, for me, it works. It works easiest when it's a small figure. The animated stuff works well. What got me started? I don't know. I've had a 3D printer for a while, but I never really wanted to do that part of the job. Sculpting was enough for me, but now I think I'm ready to take more of the print jobs, and see it to the completion that way.
You soliciting work on our
So if anybody needs a 3D printer, contact me. No, I got a 3D printer for fun, really, and I figured it was about time I started using it, paying it off.
Yeah.
If you already spend so much time thinking about how things occupy three-dimensional space, you're probably leagues ahead of most people playing one.
Well, it's good to, it's good to be able to hold it in your hand, before other people do, so you can see if there are, those kinds of mistakes, kind of like what Gene was talking about earlier. There's a big difference between having it in front of you while you're working on it and just, sculpting, in air.
I would imagine that it's probably nice to be able to manage the quality of your output also. So now I work with a bunch of different companies, and sometimes the way things are printed, it's like you get the best output for the amount of money you're willing to spend. And sometimes when you see an output, I do a lot of art correction on digital stuff. And I see stuff on the screen where like an action figure that has a head like the size of a lima bean, has like pores in the skin and all the hair is differentiated and eyebrows. And then when it's printed, you can't even tell there were eyebrows there. So I think that it'd be nice to be able to say, well, I know, like when I sculpt something in clay, I know that's going into silicone, I micromanage the whole thing, so I know exactly what I did is coming out the other end. With digital, it's not necessarily the case, depending on the output, so I would think it would be cool to obsess over that part of it as well.
Absolutely. Over the years, on certain projects, not necessarily with DC, but I've been unpleasantly surprised with some of the output work that it just looks like my sculpt has gone down in quality tremendously. So it is good to know.
We even bought a 3D printer in house, so we've done the same thing. But yeah, and that's why, because you can actually really go in and do something apart.
Fewer unpleasant surprises. I know, as comic book fans, we tend to sort of fall in love with vintage comics with their imperfections, with colors landing in the wrong place. But I imagine that is not something y'all want to have to live with after you've spent.
But that's a collectible feature we
Not
want
acceptable.
So we have some more wonderful figures in the Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line. This one's in stores this month, and he's probably the one I'm going to get. And then we have Alfred Michelangelo in November 2019.
It's fun to get an outfit figure out there. We made one for Hush, the Hush line, a long time ago, but nice to get a new one out there. It's been a little while.
You made an Alfred with the Batcave for the interesting
It's
thing,
still been
right?
a while, but yes, thank you. You're right, I forgot about that one. So we're right.
It's very
Snooty. Yeah, it was interesting teaming up the turtles with what we thought were the appropriate characters.
Yeah, that's a design.
Well, when you have like Donatello, he's, with the purple mask, and Batgirl's kind of purple, like, oh, that kind of works.
Plus they're going
That one worked the best, I guess. Really.
I like this pairing because I imagine Michelangelo would make Alfred's life difficult.
Yes, that's what we kind of had made a good match with Adam's snooty outfit. So, really fun project to work on. We don't usually get to dip our toes in other, in other properties like this, but it's really cool when we get the chance. And I think I said earlier when back in New York, Gene had sculpted a lot of Warcraft figures. And that was, challenging in its own way, but they came out great. But it's interesting when you get to look at all that stuff and get it out of DC once in a while. So it's really, really fun project. Really happy with it.
I think we have one more set from this line coming in December.
Oh, that's a good reaction.
Roz and/or Rachel.
Why on earth did we team those two guys that time? What was the reason?
If y'all have not read or seen these, the Batman Ninja Turtles crosses, by the way, I wildly endorse them. They're so much fun.
Now, who's seen the movie out there? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice. Good for you. That's super fun. Yeah, it's close enough.
So from the expanding universes, we go to different versions of one character. We've got the Harley Quinn red, white, and black line. And we've got coming in June 2019, the CQ. This one looks so cool. Is this based on Brick and Glass?
Yeah.
Oh.
That book is amazing. It's beautifully drawn. The story's fantastic. And we kind of jumped on that one pretty fast. It's funny, someone asked me earlier for this line and not in black and white, like even you asked me order of them. Sometimes something like this comes in and you're like, we have to do this now. So it'll push back something else we may have planned originally, but that artwork is just incredible, and that statue is really beautiful. And Guillaume March is great. I love his stuff. It's super energetic. It's very, very lively, and I think that piece shows it off. And Amanda Connor's been a long time collaborating with DC, directing DC Collectibles, and I think that was sculpted as a Batman black and white statue, but we thought it made, more sense this way, so we're just going to put it back out in color, so.
That's fantastic. And her designs really speak for themselves. And that will be out in September of next year. Now, unfortunately, Greg couldn't be with us today, but he is becoming a big part of DC Collectibles. Can you talk a bit about working with him?
Yeah, we've been working with him for years on stuff. There was a whole action figure line, a really long-running action figure line. We've done really deep into the run with him and Scott. All the stuff we've done with him has been, he's changed a lot of the course of DC history in some cases where there's illustrations. Just the Man Who Laughs Batman, I don't even know how many Man Who Laughs Batman things are that are out there, but there's a ton of them. And he's been really great to work on with the stuff. He'll, give us reference when we ask for it. And it's just quite a lot of projects with Greg. It's probably outside Jim Lee, he might be the person we've done the most things on. We did a long run of Alex Ross figures as well, so he's right in that midsummer. I don't have to go back and count them all. But, and plus all the statues.
Count them all.
Right now? Yes. Okay. Okay. So there's some of the figures. I'm sure you guys remember some of these. So there's quite a few there. We were really excited to do all these things. I still love that red hood with the lipstick head on. It's pretty great. The
I've
Gordon.
never heard it called that.
Oh, okay, so that's not what it says on the packaging, by the way. And then the Gordon armor thing back there was really cool. It came with that Batman with the black suit on. That was a really fun piece to work on. And there's one of the talons out in the front. So when you have an artist like this that's this popular, you can tend to go like a little deeper. Even like Riddler, who's not maybe our best-selling character, came out great there. And we got a Commissioner Gordon in here too, which is great.
Have you ever done any that haven't been announced, or are they?
For that line?
Yeah.
Yes. And then this metal line for us has been really fun to work on. I mean, the designs for this stuff, when we first saw these at Collectibles, we were like, oh my God, we have to make these right away. I mean, we saw these designs pretty early on, and the only debate was, are they going to be statues or action figures? Because it could have been either one. So we went the statue route because we wanted to make sure we could get them all in scale like that. The Doomsday Batman up there would have cost quite a lot of money as an action figure to make. So we're like, you know what? We put them in statue form, it's still expensive, but it's not what the mold cost or the tooling cost overseas would have been crazy. And we wanted to make sure we made the man to last with all his minions, who's the last one coming out. But representing all the evil Batmans was fun, and I have to say, one of the best things we've done recently is that baby Darkseid in a backpack. I mean, that is...
Sorry, that's my favorite.
Right? I mean, that isn't that great.
It's just so cute, y'all.
Actually, Georgie in the audience has sculpted some of the... Where is he? There he is. Stand up there. There he is. Thank you. So I think he had a fun time working on those, but he isn't on the panel, so we don't have to ask him.
And finally, I think we have some the black and white statues.
Yeah, that's another one, and this is why actually Gene has come in at, well, actually Paul's, so right now Jonathan Matthews has sculpted the most Batman black and whites. But right next to him is Paul Hardy at number 2 and Gene at number 3. So these are the guys that have sculpted the most black and whites that we've done the whole time. So, but yeah, the stuff from Greg is great. They're super. That Joker is still, that face pulled off Joker is super creepy.
So speaking of Batman Black and White, this is the year that the big 100th
Yeah.
statue got announced. Can you tell us?
Yay! Yes. So George, when we hit this number, would you ever expect us to hit 100 statues? Yeah. Yeah.
This is not in a million years.
Yeah. So the McFarlane one was it. So we've been talking to Todd for a while, about probably 4 years on and off of having him do one. But he has other commitments, so we couldn't get him on board. And then we went back and he's like, you know what, this cover of anything he's done for DC, that's what he signs the most of that people ask for. So we just took, there used to be a woman inside, these kind of cradling inside there, and we just took her out. And this was another challenging one, like Paul was saying earlier, with no reference. It's just that, if you look at that cover, and that's all we had. And you don't have any idea what's going on. So I tried to do an underdrawing under Batman to see what was actually happening. And that'll never be seen in public, because it doesn't make any sense. But we talked to Todd about it, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. We'll just have to figure it out in sculpting, which is the kind of stuff he used to have to deal with over there. So we basically, Todd helped us work through what he thought this was supposed to be. It actually went pretty quickly, and then, it's obviously all about the cape and the cool look of it, I think is what we were stressing. So it's definitely the biggest one of the ones we've done so far, and looking forward to 100 more.
What do you think you'll do for 200?
Gene and Paul team up and make something. Yeah, well, I did that.
If Gene lets me.
There it is.
How would sculptors go about collaborating? Would you just make companion pieces or like trade something back and forth? Is that a common thing? Has it been done?
We've done it. We've done it sometime before. We did something a long time ago where Tony and Tim Burton teamed up. Tony Cipriano and Tim Burton teamed up on one statue. We got put together. I mean, sometimes stuff will get reworked by another sculptor. Either somebody runs out of time or whatever, or it's just like going the way. So that does happen. I don't think we try to do it that often because you guys know what they're doing, so we try not to, have them step on each
What would
other.
the fun version be?
What's that?
What would the fun version of a collaboration between sculptors be?
I usually, if I bring in a real big job, I have a bunch of friends and some of them are local. So a lot of times I maybe would start a piece, get kind of like the anatomy roughed out, and then have a friend do some more detail work, and we'd kind of back and forth, and then I'd go over the whole thing. Because I used to run a lot of lines for Diamond when they were doing Battlestar Galactica and all the Stargate stuff and things like that. So with that stuff, I would hire a bunch of guys. Some guys would do portraits, some guys would just do like paramilitary gear. Some guys are better at anatomy or drapery. And then I would kind of go over things, and if there was a cool character, I'd pick out cool characters and do it myself. But so you can kind of sit in a room together and pass stuff back and forth. But usually, I take to a certain point, hand it out to all the people. Like typically, I do all the base bodies, and then pass those out because I have guys all over the country sometimes doing jobs. And you want everything to come back. Traditionally, you can't go back and do a lot of fooling with the size. You can maybe shrink something a little, like remolding it and casting it in X, but, so I want to get everything laid out in the proper size so that when I got it back into the studio, there's no real big surprises.
Wait, are you mailing little clay bodies all over the country? Is that what I'm hearing?
Pretty much,
Those were the bodies of everything.
yeah.
Yeah, back when I used to sculpt traditionally too, I would do it the exact same way. I used to work with a guy named Dave Cortez, and, you know, we would go back and forth. He would start things, I would help him out, you know.
Does it help to occasionally sort of the next pair of eyes catches something about the construction that you had missed, or?
Yeah, I think that's always important with art and a collaboration. I mean, even when you're working by yourself on a piece, when you step away and come back to it, you see everything that you were too lazy to do the day before, or, you know, something.
All right, I think we have a couple more things to look at in the Batman black and white line.
Yeah, there's all 100 up till now, and there's going to be more than that. So there's so many great examples of why this line works and why Batman works in this particular format. I mean, he's a very limited color palette anyway, and you can like anything from that Sergio Aragonés Batman to like the Romeo stuff that Gene worked on. There's such a huge gamut of Batman characters, and it also expanded out into the Batman family at one point because we just thought Batman's villains and the rest of the Bat family are a core part of who Batman is. So that's when Joker started showing up and Harley and some other stuff. And then funnily enough, Harley Quinn is the best-selling Batman black and white statue. So, I think you can win that one. But. So yeah, it's quite a collection. Paul's counting.
I'm seeing where I started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So here's the two newest ones that are in the case. We have the Armored Batman from Frank Miller, and it's the Jim Lee. It's the third Jim Lee Batman black and white statue. This is the first one where he's standing all the way up. Because we have the crouching one and kind of the leaping one, and this is the more just heroic, classic Jim Lee piece that's out there. Frank Miller saw this statue. We did an event at FAO Schwartz. He loved it. He really liked the treatment of the cape. That was sculpted by Alderton, who's been a big Frank Miller fan. They've met a few times and stuff. But I really love what he did with, if you go down the case and look at that, the cape was all flat planes, which is a really, it matches the art. He really did a nice job of that.
And what's 102 going to be?
Well, let's see, that's 101 and 102, yeah? Yes. So what's 103? Oh, I'm not allowed to say, am I? Or is it that? So this is a really neat one. I immediately thought of Gene when we picked this piece of artwork. I wanted to do this cover the minute it came in. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. But everyone's like, what is that? It's like, it doesn't even really happen. It's just like a kind of weird cover that he did. And this was a little bit of a process, right, Gene? Because all we had was an angle from here up.
Yeah, you sort of have almost like a bust shot, so you don't really see, so you can't really tell what the costume is,
No.
you can't. So I worked on the assumption that the costume was going to be Capullo's costume that he'd been doing in the book. And the only thing I thought would be cool is if his feet were busting out of the bottom of the boots and it showed like kind of bird to kind of carry the whole bird theme down from the head. And then, you just try to match that one view. But in solving, sort of like they're talking about with the McFarlane with the big crazy cape, you sort of have to know what's going on inside there. And the difference was is once you rotate it past the money shot from the book cover, you see the whole front of his body, so it has to make sense. So you have to make some compromises to what the actual money shot art is so that your other views are going to make sense. That ends up being one of the primary issues with sculpting when you're translating a piece of traditional two-dimensional art into 3D is that every view has to make sense. It can't just be one view. So this was kind of a landmark piece for that. And I liked it because I do a lot of monster stuff too.
Yeah, that's
so,
what we thought. Actually, you did the same thing for the one right before this, the Gene Colan piece. Because we had a really funky pose. So I actually pictured of Gene posing like Batman from the vote for approval because we couldn't really tell from the angle. But this one, yeah, it's definitely a little weird. And Greg and Scott loved the feet coming out of the bottom. We showed it to them at San Diego. They're like, hell yeah, I think was the response. So it looks great. That's a really cool piece. Probably going to be one of my favorite ones in the line because it's just so 3D.
Okay, so for all the marbles, which is objectively better, working digitally or traditionally? The answer is Batman Who Laughs. I didn't see it coming.
Well, for me, at the end of the day, being one of the art directors there, I'm mostly concerned that it looks the way it needs to look. So I am going to cast no votes because these guys are both super talented and they both are great at what they do. So my vote is either way as long as it looks great.
Well, I mean, I like working in different types of media. Like if I do something like this, like, you know, I do part of it in clay, part of it in wax. I may fabricate parts, like the feathers I fabricated out of plastic. So I'm working in a lot of different materials. But as someone who does a lot of art direction, I can't argue with the expeditiousness of the digital medium. So I mean, I'm in the process of transitioning into that myself, just because at this point in the industry, it's tough to be competitive when a sculpture takes me 3 weeks, and I know guys can blow this stuff out in like a week or less. So immediately, it's like, even if you have somebody like Jim or like the guys that work at the Diamond, they still hire traditional guys. But just from a money standpoint, if I'm making the same money for 3 weeks of my time or 1 week of my time, I have to eventually start thinking in terms of economics. Otherwise, you know, it's great to sit up on my high horse and push clay around, but at the end of the day, I want to pay my bills too.
Amen. 10 years ago, I switched to digital.
It's amazing to spend a long.
It's crazy. And the piece that I convinced Jim to let me do digitally was a hybrid of you know, Vaseline and wax. Found parts, like I got rocks out of my yard, and then I had to make the robots digitally. So
Those are some of the best rocks you ever sculpted.
those are beautiful rocks.
That was that battle statue, yeah, I remember that.
So that was my transition piece. It was a labor, but yeah, I mean everything Gene said is 100% correct.
So Gene and Jim said they both started out collecting. How did you start out in terms of getting into this world?
I've been collecting for like 40 years. So, hardcore collector. Bought action figures as a kid, and I would study them, and I would love them or hate them, but I had to have them all. So, it's nice to play in this world as an adult.
And it's nice to have the problem that there are more than we can reasonably pick up. It sure beats the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up spending years just tracing Kirby stuff in my basement and having all kinds of odd jobs all at once and going to the comic book store and buying whatever came out, so.
We do have time for just a couple questions. If anybody has any, please line up here. I think we have our first one already.
Michael, the black and white mini line, are you going to be able to produce all the black and whites in the mini line?
I don't know if that's on the agenda right now, but, you know, theoretically, yes, we could do that. We are basically in the process of digitizing all the sculpts in case we have to shrink it down.
Next question. Hi, thanks for coming. If you could pop over to the right side, thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry to see that, but I'll talk loud. Two questions. One is, did any of you guys sculpt the Norm Bracelet before? No?
Nobody on this panel, that's what it is, so.
It's awesome. So pass that along. It's awesome. And then, is there any idea to do a Greg Capullo one of like the costume that you have from metal, but doing that as a black and white? I'm dying to get like that.
I mean, if it's, you know, anything that Greg's been doing, it's probably likely we'll get on it at some point. It's funny though, that's like you said earlier, the black and white just keeps changing and constantly. Because we have, like, even if you point out the Brayfield one, that got done way later in the run than I ever would have suspected. It only came out, like, a couple of years ago or last year.
Yeah.
And since he's such a classic long-running artist, it's like something else would happen, like, oh, okay, we got to bump him again. And the cape was actually sculpted bigger than that one.
Oh, great.
But,
Cool. Thank you guys.
yeah.
Thank you. Next question. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for all the amazing toys. I was just wondering, are we going to get like Batwoman in the animated extension line, or more Batman turtle figures?
The Batman turtle figures that are there are the ones we've done up till now. We have some other ones waiting in the wings, but I'm not sure when they'll come out. We'll see how these do. That woman in the animated series is a really good idea, actually. That would make a really cool figure. So thanks, that's a good suggestion.
Please put me down for one of those.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I was wondering, will we ever get the figure of the Batman Who Laughs series figures?
For which line?
Just the Batman Who Laughs in general, with Batman Doomsday, Batman Green Lantern, Batman Aquaman.
Oh yeah, the Batman Who Laughs is the last one in the statues. He's the last one in the line. He comes with all three of the Robin minions.
So the statue, will we ever get them in figure series?
The only one we have planned for right now is that animated, stylized one. So right now, that's what's on our schedule. I mean, he's a super popular figure though, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of people ask for it though.
Yeah, it's true.
And last question. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. I was wondering, in the course of action figures, would you maybe try something maybe with Green Arrow or Plastic Man?
Plastic Man's awesome. He's such a great character. Green Arrow was supposed to be on one of those lists at some point, but I think he just got bumped down the food chain a bit. And Plastic Man is actually, as much stuff as he can do, is actually a pretty tough sell. This is, we can't seem to move enough of him, but we did an Alex Ross Plastic Man a while ago that has a bunch of interchangeable parts and stuff. That one was pretty cool, and he should fit in scale with any of these guys. I can't say Plastic Man's on the agenda tomorrow, that's for sure.
All right, thank you.
Maybe when the movie comes out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So for more info, you can of course visit DC Collectibles on my website, dccomics.com/collectibles, or on Facebook at facebook.com/DCcollectibles, or DCollectibles, or on Instagram at DC_collectibles. Thank you all so much for coming.